Hello, in this short lecture I will give you a couple of reasons for the non-existence of God. The first reason why God doesn't exist is because of the fact that God is perfect, so He would have never created such an imperfect world. The second reason why God doesn't exist is God would have never created such a world with the human beings that are capable to do sins and crimes and so on. And we could ask the simple question why God created the human beings. If the answer to that question is because He wanted to put them to the test, then it makes no sense, because He could have created perfect creatures that will never do sins or crimes at all, and then He don't need to put anyone to the test. So it makes no sense. That is the reason. And we also should remember that God knows what will happen in the future. And for that reason, God knew that the human beings will do sins and crimes and so on. So why He created them from the beginning? As I have already said, He could have created perfect creatures that will never do sins and crimes and so on. So from that we can deduce that God didn't create the world, and therefore God doesn't exist. The third reason why God doesn't exist is because God would have never created such a world in which there are so much human suffering, so much violence and death and murders, and so much wars and poverty and hunger, and so much natural disasters such as earthquakes, floods and hurricanes. So God would have never created such a bad world, and therefore we can deduce that God doesn't exist. The fourth reason why God doesn't exist is because God would have never created such a world in which the predator, the very existence of the predator is dependent in his ability to kill the prey. The very existence of the lion is dependent in his ability to kill the deer or the lamb or any other animal in order to survive. So such a cruel world, and where there are so much injustice and so much cruelty, would have never been created by God, and therefore God doesn't exist. The fifth reason why God doesn't exist is that there are actually three monotheistic religions. Monotheistic is defined as a belief in one God, or the oneness of God. And those religions actually contradict each other the religions are the Christianity, the Judaism, and the Islam, and they are contradict each other in their description or in their explanation how God created the world. And they also don't have the same God. The God of the Christianity is not the same God as the God of the Judaism or the God of the Islam. So because of all those contradictions and differences in gods, we can deduce that they are all false. They are not true. They are the invention of the human beings. And God also was created by the human beings. It is the invention of the human beings. And for that reason, God doesn't exist at all. And the sixth, the last reason why God doesn't exist is a logic reason. We can say that logically it is impossible that such a being that is omnipotent exists, or logically it is impossible that such an entity that is all power exists. I will explain why. Because we can ask the simple question, if God is able to create such a big stone that he himself cannot lift. If the answer to this question is positive, then we can say that God is not able to lift the stone that he himself created, and therefore is not omnipotent. Therefore, he is not all power. And if the answer to that question is negative, then we can say that God is not able to create such a big stone that he himself cannot lift. And therefore we can deduce the same conclusion, that God is not all power, God is not omnipotent. Anyway, we can conclude from that example that such an entity that is omnipotent, logically it is impossible to exist, or such a being that is all power, logically it is impossible to exist. And therefore that God that is defined as all power, logically it is impossible that such a being exists, and therefore God doesn't exist. So those were all the reasons for the non-existence of God. Okay, thank you very much.